My mother-in-law handed me a DNA report proving that my husband was not the father of my baby. 3 days later, the laboratory called. The report she gave me was fake. The real test confirmed that my husband was Noah's father, but it also revealed something no one in our family was prepared to discover. My husband was not biologically related to the woman he had called Mom for 35 years. My name is Emily Carter. I was 32 when this happened. My husband Daniel was 35, and our son Noah was 4 months old. Until that winter, I believed the greatest danger facing our family was Noah's health. I did not know that one medical test would uncover a secret hidden since the night Daniel was born. Noah had been a quiet baby from the beginning. He rarely cried. Everyone told me I was lucky. Then he began getting sick. First, it was a fever, then an ear infection that returned only days after he finished his medication. By the time he was 3 months old, he had been admitted to the hospital twice with infections the doctors could not explain. Daniel tried to remain calm for both of us. He slept in a chair beside Noah's hospital crib. He learned how to read the numbers on every monitor. He asked the nurses questions I was too frightened to ask. But when Noah was admitted for the 3rd time, even Daniel could no longer hide his fear. A pediatric immunologist named Dr. Maya Shah ordered advanced genetic testing. She explained that Noah might have a rare inherited immune disorder. If the test confirmed her suspicion, he might eventually need a bone marrow transplant. The laboratory needed samples from both parents. They also recommended testing close relatives in case one of us was a compatible donor. Daniel's father, Richard, had died 5 years earlier. My parents lived overseas. That left Daniel's mother, Victoria. Victoria Carter was 62 years old. She had short, silver blonde hair, perfect posture, and the ability to make concern sound like an instruction. She lived 20 minutes from us in the large brick house where Daniel had grown up. Victoria had never been openly cruel to me. She was more careful than that. She corrected the way I held Noah. She rearranged my kitchen without asking. She bought him clothes and removed the tags before giving them to us so I could not return anything. Whenever Daniel and I disagreed, she somehow knew about it before I had told anyone. But she loved her son. At least that was what I believed. When Daniel called and explained that the doctors needed her DNA sample, Victoria arrived at the hospital within an hour. She wore a burgundy coat and carried a folder containing 35 years of family medical records. She had Daniel's childhood vaccination documents, his old hospital discharge papers, even dental records when he was 7. "I knew keeping these would be important one day," she said. Dr. Shaw collected blood and cheek swab samples from the 3 of us. The laboratory would analyze inherited immune markers and compare biological relations to confirm that every sample had been labeled correctly. Dr. Shaw told us the results would take between 10 and 14 days. Victoria asked whether the report would be mailed. "No," Dr. Shaw said. "The parents will receive it through the secure patient portal." "I prefer paper," Victoria replied. "Mrs. Carter, Noah's parents control his medical records. I am his grandmother. You will receive any information Emily and Daniel choose to share." Victoria smiled, but I noticed that her hands had tightened around her handbag. On the drive home, she asked Daniel for the portal password. Daniel laughed because he thought she was joking. She did not laugh with him. "I only want to understand what we're dealing with," she said. "We'll tell you when we know," I replied. Victoria looked at me through the rearview mirror. I was speaking to my son. That evening, after she left, Daniel apologized. He told me his mother became controlling when she was frightened. He said he lost a baby before he was born. Hospitals make her anxious. I'd heard pieces of that story before. Victoria's first baby had been stillborn. Daniel was born 11 months later at St. Anne's Hospital. There had been an electrical fire in the maternity wing the night he was delivered. Several patients were evacuated. Hospital records from that night were damaged. Victoria never spoke about it. Daniel said she still became upset whenever she smelled smoke. At the time, I thought that explained her behavior. 10 days after the samples were collected, I received a voicemail from the genetic laboratory. A counselor said Noah's results were complete. She asked Daniel and me to schedule a consultation for the following afternoon. I returned the call but reached voicemail. Less than an hour later, Victoria arrived at our house. She was holding a large white medical envelope. "I think you should sit down," she said. My stomach tightened. "How did you get that?" "It was delivered to my house." "Why would Noah's results go to your address?" "I don't know. Perhaps the hospital used Daniel's childhood records." The envelope had already been opened. Victoria removed a thick report and placed it on the kitchen table. A yellow note marked one page. "Emily," she said softly, "there's something you need to explain before Daniel comes home." I looked at the marked section. Most of the medical language meant nothing to me, but one sentence had been highlighted. "The tested male is excluded as the biological father of the child." Tested male, Daniel Carter. Child, Noah Carter. Probability of paternity, 0%. I read the page again, then a third time. "That's impossible." Victoria sat across from me. "The test says otherwise." "I've never been with anyone except Daniel. I'm not interested in the details." "There are no details." "Then perhaps the hospital made a mistake." She said the words gently, but she was watching me too closely. "What did the rest of the report say about Noah's illness?" I asked. "We can discuss that after you tell my son the truth." There is no other truth. Noah began crying in the living room. I moved toward him. Victoria blocked my path. "Daniel deserves to hear this from you. Get out of my way. You will not use my grandson to avoid this conversation. He might not be your grandson according to the paper you just gave me." For the first time, Victoria looked afraid. It lasted less than a second. Then her face became calm again. We should wait for Daniel. He arrived 20 minutes later. Victoria was sitting at the table with the report in front of her. I stood beside Noah's crib with my arms wrapped around me. Daniel knew something was wrong before he removed his coat. "What happened?" Victoria pushed the report toward him. "You need to read the marked page." Daniel looked at me. I wanted to explain before he read it, but I did not know how to defend myself against something printed on official laboratory paper. His eyes moved down the page. His face lost all color. "Emily, it isn't true. The report says—" "I know what it says. Then tell me why. I can't explain a result that is wrong." Daniel looked toward Noah. The baby was sleeping again. "You told me there was no one else." "There wasn't." "Was there someone before we married?" "We've been married for 6 years. Noah is 4 months old." Victoria touched Daniel's arm. "You don't have to do this tonight." He pulled away from her. "I need to think." "Daniel, please," I said. He stared at me as if he no longer recognized me. That hurt more than the accusation. I had expected anger from Victoria. I had expected judgment. I had never expected doubt from him. "I want another test," he said. "Yes, immediately." Victoria stood. "You are both emotional. Daniel should stay with me tonight." "He should stay with his wife and son." Victoria looked at me. "We no longer know whether Noah is his son." Daniel flinched, but he did not defend me. He packed an overnight bag. Before leaving, he stood beside Noah's crib for almost a minute. He did not touch him. Then he followed his mother out of the house. I watched their car disappear down the street. For the next hour, I cried. Then the shock began to fade. Something else replaced it. Anger. I returned to the kitchen and examined the report more carefully. The first page looked official. The laboratory logo was at the top. Noah's name and date of birth were correct. Daniel's information was correct. My information was correct. But the paper felt slightly heavier than the remaining pages. The font used for the paternity result was also darker. I placed the first page beside page 2. The margins did not align. On the bottom of the first page was a sample identification number. On the following page, Noah's sample ended in 7184. On the paternity page, it ended in 7148. 2 numbers had been reversed. I called the laboratory. A receptionist answered. "My son's report has the wrong sample number. I need to speak to the genetic counselor immediately." She asked for my name, Noah's birth date, and the security code connected to his account. Then she put me on hold. A woman named Olivia Grant came to the phone. "Mrs. Carter, where did you obtain a printed report?" "It was delivered today." "That isn't possible." "My mother-in-law brought it to my house." There was a pause. "The report was released electronically. A paper copy can only be collected in person with identification and written authorization." "I didn't authorize anyone." Olivia asked me to photograph every page and upload the images through a secure link. I sent them while we were still speaking. She examined the report. Then she asked if I was alone. "Yes." "Mrs. Carter, the first page did not come from our laboratory." My legs weakened. "What does the real page say?" "I can't interpret the complete medical findings without a scheduled consultation, but I can confirm that the relationship result you received is false." "Is Daniel Noah's father?" "The verified test shows a parent-child probability greater than 99.99%. I sat on the kitchen floor. For several seconds, I could not speak. Daniel was Noah's father. I had known it, but hearing the confirmation allowed me to breathe again. Then Olivia said there was another problem. The family relationship software had identified an unexpected result in the samples. "What kind of result?" "The test confirms you are Noah's biological mother." "I know." "It confirms Daniel is his biological father." "Yes." "But the sample provided by Victoria Carter does not show a biological parent-child relationship with Daniel." I stopped breathing. "What are you saying?" "Based on the samples submitted, Victoria Carter is not Daniel Carter's biological mother." I asked her to repeat it. She did. The report Victoria had changed was never meant to expose me. It was meant to hide her. Someone had removed the page proving she was not related to Daniel and replaced it with a false page accusing me of infidelity. Olivia told me the laboratory's privacy department would open an investigation. She also confirmed that someone had collected a duplicate report that morning. The person had presented a photocopy of my driver's license and a signed authorization form bearing my name. The signature was not mine. The laboratory had security cameras. Olivia couldn't show me the footage without involving hospital security, but she described the person who collected the envelope. A woman in her early 60s, short silver blonde hair, burgundy coat. My mother-in-law. I called Daniel. He did not answer. I called again. The call went directly to voicemail. Then I tried Victoria. She answered immediately. "Where is Daniel?" "He's asleep." "Wake him up." "He needs time." "The report is fake." Silence. "The laboratory confirmed Daniel is Noah's father. They also confirmed you picked up the original report using a forged authorization." Victoria's breathing changed. "What else did they tell you?" It was not the question of an innocent woman. "They told me you aren't Daniel's biological mother." Another silence followed. This one was longer. When Victoria finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "You should have accepted the first report. You changed my baby's DNA results. I was trying to protect my son. You tried to destroy his marriage, because a broken marriage would hurt him less than the truth."
What truth? She did not answer. I heard movement in the background. A door closing. Keys. Victoria, put Daniel on the phone. I can't. Why? Because once he learns what happened, he will never look at me the same way again. What happened? Her voice broke. It started at St. Anne's Hospital. The night Daniel was born? The night of the fire. I stood slowly. What did you do? I did not take him, she whispered, but I knew he wasn't mine. Then the call ended. I drove to Victoria's house with the real DNA report open on my phone. Her front door was unlocked. Every light was on. Daniel's overnight bag remained beside the stairs. But Daniel and Victoria were gone. On the dining room table was an old photograph of the St. Anne's maternity ward. A date was written on the back. December 14th, 35 years earlier. Taped beneath the photograph was a newborn identification bracelet. The surname printed on it was not Carter. It was Bennett. Beside the bracelet was a newspaper clipping about a hospital fire and a newborn boy who had disappeared during the evacuation. That missing baby had a name, Matthew Bennett, and according to the date on the bracelet, he had been born 17 minutes before my husband.
The newborn bracelet belonged to Matthew Bennett, a baby who disappeared from St. Anne's Hospital 35 years earlier. The date and time printed on the bracelet placed him inside the maternity ward only 17 minutes before Daniel was born, or before the baby everyone believed was Daniel had been born. I photographed the bracelet, the newspaper clipping, and the maternity ward photograph without touching them. Then I called Daniel again. This time, he answered. "Where are you?" I asked. His breathing was unsteady. "I'm safe." "Are you with Victoria?" "Yes." "Your mother changed Noah's DNA report." "I know. She forged my signature and tried to make you believe Noah wasn't yours." "I know, Emily." His voice sounded empty. "Did she tell you why?" "She told me something. I don't know if I believe her." "Come home." "I need time." "You can have time at home. Noah needs you." He was silent. I looked toward the newborn bracelet on the table. "Daniel, I found something in her house." "What?" "A bracelet from St. Anne's. It belongs to a baby named Matthew Bennett." Daniel inhaled sharply. "Put it back." "Why?" "Because Mom said there are things in the house that don't belong to us. She left them on the table for someone to find." "No, she left in a hurry." "Where are you?" "I can't tell you." "Why not?" "Because she says someone else was involved." "Who?" The call ended. I tried calling again. His phone had been switched off. I stood alone inside Victoria's dining room with the lights burning around me. Daniel had left his overnight bag beside the stairs. Victoria's coat was gone. Her handbag was gone. A drawer beneath the telephone stood open. Inside was an empty space where she normally kept her car keys. I called the police. The first officer who arrived treated the situation as a family argument. Daniel was an adult. He had told me he was safe. Victoria was free to leave her own home. But everything changed when I showed the officer the altered DNA report and the laboratory email confirming that my authorization had been forged. A detective named Mara Quinn arrived shortly after midnight. She was in her late 40s, with dark hair streaked with gray, and a calm voice that made it easier to think. Detective Quinn examined the documents on Victoria's table. She placed the newborn bracelet inside an evidence bag. Then she photographed the newspaper clipping. "Do you know why your mother-in-law kept these?" she asked. "No." "Did she ever mention the Bennett family?" "Never." Quinn searched the missing child database. The original case remained open. Matthew James Bennett had disappeared during the St. Anne's maternity wing fire on December 14th, 35 years earlier. Her mother, Laura Bennett, survived the fire. She had been found unconscious in a recovery room after emergency surgery. When she woke, hospital administrators told her that her newborn son had died, but the body presented to her family was later identified as another infant. By the time authorities discovered the error, Matthew was gone. No one knew whether he had died in the fire, been transferred to another hospital without documentation, or been taken deliberately. Laura Bennett never accepted that her son was dead. For 35 years, she submitted DNA samples to missing person databases. No match had ever been found, until Daniel's sample entered the genetic laboratory. Detective Quinn contacted hospital security and asked them to preserve every recording connected to Victoria's visit. She also requested the original laboratory files. Then she told me to go home to Noah. "I'll contact you when we locate your husband. He isn't missing. You don't know where he is, and his mother just admitted involvement in an unresolved infant disappearance. Let us treat this carefully." I returned home shortly before 2 in the morning. Noah was asleep. My neighbor, Jenna, had stayed with him. After she left, I sat beside his crib and studied his face. Daniel's hazel eyes, Daniel's dark hair, the tiny crease beside his mouth that appeared whenever he was about to cry. Daniel was Noah's father, but I no longer knew who Daniel's father had been. At 7 in the morning, Daniel came home. He looked as if he had not slept. His clothes smelled faintly of smoke. I stood between him and Noah's crib. "Where is Victoria?" "I don't know. You were with her. She left me at my father's old hunting cabin." "What does that mean?" Daniel removed a folded letter from inside his coat. The paper was old. His name was written on the front in Richard Carter's handwriting. "My mother gave me this before she left." The letter had been written 6 years earlier, shortly before Richard died. Daniel had never seen it. He opened it on the kitchen table. Richard began by apologizing. He wrote that the baby Victoria delivered at St. Anne's had been born with severe heart defects. The doctors tried to save him. He died 40 minutes after birth. Victoria had been unconscious following emergency surgery. Richard was a young physician working at St. Anne's. He knew his wife had already lost one baby. He believed learning that a second child had died would destroy her. Then the electrical fire began. Smoke filled the maternity wing. The power failed. Nurses moved mothers and babies into the corridors. In the confusion, Richard saw an infant lying in a portable crib near a service stairwell. The child's identification card read Matthew Bennett. Richard wrote that the boy's mother had abandoned him. He claimed a nurse told him Laura Bennett had left the hospital before the fire and did not want the baby. He carried Matthew into Victoria's room. He removed the Bennett identification bracelet. Then he placed the bracelet belonging to his dead son around the living baby's ankle. Richard used his position at the hospital to change the discharge record. 2 days later, Victoria left St. Anne's with a living baby named Daniel Carter. The dead Carter infant was recorded as an unidentified fire victim. Matthew Bennett disappeared from the hospital system. Richard's final paragraph was addressed directly to Daniel. "I did an unforgivable thing because I could not bear to lose you before I had the chance to know you. Whatever name you were given at birth, you became my son the moment I carried you through the smoke. I hope you never read this, but if you do, understand that your mother did not know." Daniel placed the letter on the table. "Dad took me. It appears that way. My mother didn't know. Not that night." Daniel looked at me. "What does that mean?" "Victoria told me she knew you weren't hers. She found out later." "When?" "She said I was 12. Victoria had discovered the newborn bracelet while cleaning Richard's locked desk. When she confronted him, Richard admitted what he had done. He told her Laura Bennett had abandoned the baby. He claimed revealing the truth would send both of them to prison and leave Daniel without parents. Victoria kept silent. "She believed him?" I asked. "She said she wanted to. For 23 years?" Daniel closed his eyes. "She was afraid. So she tried to make you believe I cheated. She panicked when she saw the DNA result. She did more than panic. She stole medical records and forged my signature. I'm not defending her. You left with her. She said you had lied to me. Then you called and said the report was fake. I didn't know who to believe. You should have believed your wife. I know." His voice broke. The anger I felt did not disappear, but I saw that Daniel had lost his entire identity in a single night. His name, his childhood, his parents, even his birthday might not truly belong to him. Before we could continue, Dr. Shaw called. Noah's medical results confirmed a rare inherited immune disorder. It was treatable, but he needed additional testing immediately. A close biological relative could provide important information and might eventually become a compatible donor. "We need accurate family history," Dr. Shaw said. "No more assumptions." Daniel agreed to give another sample under direct supervision. So did I. Victoria could not be reached. At the hospital, Olivia Grant met us in a private consultation room. She showed us the verified relationship chart. Daniel and Noah were confirmed as father and son. My relationship to Noah was confirmed. Victoria's sample showed no biological relation to either Daniel or Noah. Daniel stared at the screen without speaking. Olivia explained that the laboratory had also found a possible match in a national missing person database. The match was strong enough to indicate a parent and child. The person connected to the sample was Laura Bennett. Daniel's hand tightened around mine. "Is she alive?" "Yes," Olivia said. "She is 64 and lives in Westbridge." Westbridge was less than 3 hours away. Detective Quinn entered the consultation room a few minutes later. She had already contacted the missing person unit handling Matthew Bennett's case. They needed a legally supervised comparison before making a final identification. Daniel gave permission. A new sample was collected and sealed in front of us. The result could be ready within 24 hours. Detective Quinn also showed us security footage from the genetic laboratory. At 9:12 that morning, Victoria entered the records office wearing her burgundy coat. She presented a photocopy of my driver's license. She also carried a forged authorization form. A clerk handed her a sealed envelope containing the complete family report. Victoria entered a restroom with the envelope. 6 minutes later, she emerged holding a different stack of papers. She placed the original report inside her handbag. The false paternity page had been prepared before she arrived. "She knew what the test might reveal," Quinn said. Daniel shook his head. "She couldn't have known for certain. She knew enough to prepare a replacement page." Olivia enlarged another part of the footage. Victoria had not entered the laboratory alone. A man wearing a maintenance uniform waited near the elevators. He never approached the records desk, but when Victoria left, he followed her. His face was partially hidden by a cap. Daniel recognized him. His name was Charles Mercer. He had been Richard Carter's closest friend. Charles was also a retired administrator from St. Anne's. He signed Daniel's corrected discharge papers 35 years earlier. Detective Quinn sent officers to Charles's address. His house was empty. His car was gone. On his desk, they found a recently opened map of the old St. Anne's campus. Most of the hospital had been demolished. Only the original maternity building remained. It was scheduled to be torn down the next week. Quinn believed Victoria and Charles were searching for something inside it. What could still be there? "Records," Quinn replied, "or evidence they believe was never found." That afternoon, Daniel received a call from an unknown number. He answered on speaker. Victoria's voice filled the hospital consultation room. "Daniel, I am sorry." "Where are you?" "I need you to listen before the police turn this into something it wasn't. Dad stole me from a hospital. Your father saved you." "From my mother?" "He told me she left you. She spent 35 years searching for me." Victoria began crying. "I didn't know that at first." "But you learned." "Yes." "When?" She did not answer. Daniel asked again.
When did you learn that Laura Bennett never abandoned me? Victoria finally whispered, the year you turned 18. Daniel stepped away from the phone. She had known for 17 years. She had allowed Laura Bennett to continue searching while raising her missing child only 3 hours away. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were my son. I still would have been your son. You don't know that. You changed Noah's DNA report because you were protecting yourself. I changed it because I knew what the truth would do to you. No, you changed it because you knew what it would do to you. Victoria stopped crying. Then her voice became urgent. Charles found something in the old hospital. What? And recording your father made the night of the fire. Detective Quinn moved closer to the phone. Where's the recording? In the maternity building. Then give it to the police. I can't. Why? Because Richard wasn't the only person who changed the baby's records. The call disconnected. Quinn immediately requested a search warrant for the abandoned maternity building, but before officers could leave, Olivia returned with preliminary confirmation from the missing person laboratory. Daniel Carter and Laura Bennett shared a biological parent-child relationship. Daniel was Matthew Bennett. Laura Bennett's missing son had been alive for 35 years. Detective Quinn called Laura to inform her. No one answered. A patrol unit was sent to her house. Her front door was unlocked, her purse and phone were inside, but Laura was gone. On her kitchen table, officers found an anonymous letter delivered that morning. Your son is alive. Come to the old St. Anne's maternity building at midnight. Come alone if you want to learn why he was taken. The letter was written before Victoria ever received Noah's DNA results. Someone knew this secret was about to be exposed. And now Daniel's biological mother was missing in the same abandoned hospital where he had disappeared 35 years earlier.
Daniel's biological mother was missing. The anonymous letter instructed her to enter the abandoned St. Anne's maternity building alone at midnight. It was already 10:47. Detective Quinn ordered officers to surround the hospital immediately. The old maternity building stood behind the newer medical center, separated from it by an overgrown service road and a rusted fence. It had been empty for almost 20 years. The city planned to demolish it the following week because parts of the roof were unstable. Daniel insisted on going. Detective Quinn refused. You are emotionally involved, and we don't know who is inside. My biological mother may be in there. That is exactly why you need to remain outside. I have been outside this story for 35 years. Quinn studied him. Then she agreed to let us travel with the command unit, provided we remained in the vehicle. Noah stayed at the pediatric hospital under Dr. Shaw's care. My sister Caroline arrived to sit with him. Before we left, I kissed his forehead and promised I would return. During the drive, Daniel said very little. He held Richard's confession letter in one hand and stared through the window. Finally, he asked me a question. What if she doesn't want to see me? Laura spent 35 years searching for you. She was searching for a baby. She was searching for her son. I'm not Matthew Bennett. Your DNA says you are. My DNA doesn't know who raised me. I reached for his hand. You don't have to choose between two lives tonight. He looked at me. What if both lives were built on lies? I did not have an answer. The abandoned maternity building appeared shortly before midnight. It was a 4-story brick structure with boarded windows and a damaged metal sign hanging above the entrance. Snow covered the steps. One window on the 3rd floor glowed faintly. Someone had restored electricity to part of the building. Police vehicles stopped beyond the trees so their headlights would not reveal the approach. Officers entered through 2 separate doors. Detective Quinn remained in contact with them by radio. At 12:11, they found Laura Bennett's car behind the building. The driver's door was unlocked. Inside was a printed copy of Daniel's photograph from the missing person database. On the back, Laura had written one sentence, "Please let this be him." Daniel read the photograph through the plastic evidence sleeve. His hands began shaking. Then the radio inside Quinn's vehicle came alive. Movement on the 3rd floor. A second officer reported hearing two people arguing near the old records wing. Quinn ordered us to remain inside the vehicle and join the search team. Daniel waited until she disappeared through the entrance. Then he opened his door. Daniel, no! I'm not sitting here while she's inside. The building is dangerous. So is whoever sent that letter. He ran toward the hospital. I followed him. The main corridor smelled of mold, wet plaster, and burned wood. Old directional signs still hung from the ceiling: maternity, surgery, recovery. Daniel used his phone flashlight as we climbed the stairs. Paint peeled from the walls. Every step echoed through the empty building. On the second floor, we found a row of abandoned bassinets covered in dust. One still had a faded paper label attached. Daniel stopped. This is where it happened. 35 years ago. It still happened. A sound came from above us. A woman shouted. Daniel ran up the next flight of stairs. We reached the third-floor records wing and found Detective Quinn beside a locked metal door. Someone had chained it from the outside. Officers cut through the chain. Inside was Laura Bennett. She was alive. She sat on the floor beside a row of filing cabinets with a flashlight and an old cassette recorder. A man lay nearby with his hands secured behind him. It was Charles Mercer. Laura had not been abducted. Charles had written the anonymous letter. He had asked her to meet him at St. Anne's because he believed the building would be destroyed before he could recover the evidence hidden there. But Victoria had followed him. She locked both of them inside the records room and took the cassette tape Charles had found. Laura looked toward the doorway. Her eyes passed over the police officers. Then she saw Daniel. Neither of them moved. For 35 years, Laura had imagined finding a child. Instead, she was looking at a grown man with a wife and a baby of his own. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say," Daniel told her. "You don't have to say anything. Did you abandon me? No. Did your father tell me I was dead? They told me there had been a mistake during the evacuation. They said you had died before the fire. Did you believe them? For 3 days." Laura explained that the hospital initially showed her the body of an infant. The identification bracelet said Bennett, but the baby had a birthmark near his right shoulder. Matthew did not. Laura demanded another examination. The hospital admitted the body was not her son. By then, Richard had altered the discharge records and taken Matthew home. Laura spent years asking police to investigate hospital staff. Richard and Charles were questioned. Both denied involvement. No one searched the Carter house because Victoria's discharge papers appeared legitimate. Laura looked at Daniel's right shoulder. She understood. Slowly, he pulled the collar of his sweater aside. There was no birthmark. Laura began crying. Daniel did not embrace her. Not yet, but he moved closer. Detective Quinn freed Charles and questioned him in the corridor. Charles admitted helping Richard change the hospital records. He claimed Richard told him the Bennett infant's mother had died during surgery. Charles changed the discharge forms and reassigned the dead Carter baby's identification number to an unidentified infant victim. 2 weeks later, he learned Laura was alive. "Why didn't you report Richard?" Quinn asked. "Because I had already falsified the records. A woman lost her son." "I know. You let her search for him for 35 years. Charles lowered his head. "Richard threatened to say the entire plan was mine. I had a wife and 2 children. I told myself the boy was safe. Did Victoria know?" "Not at first." "When did she learn?" Charles hesitated. "She knew more than Richard admitted in his letter." Richard's letter claimed Victoria had been unconscious when Richard brought Matthew into her room. Charles said that was not entirely true. Victoria was heavily sedated, but she was awake enough to hear Richard tell her her biological baby had died. She saw him carrying another woman's child. Richard told her the boy's mother was gone. He asked whether he should return the infant to the evacuation corridor. Victoria held the baby against her chest. She told him no. Richard later wrote the letter claiming she knew nothing because he wanted to protect her if the crime was ever discovered. Daniel heard every word. "My mother knew that night?" Charles looked at Daniel. She knew the baby was not hers. The corridor became silent. Victoria had lied again. She did not discover the truth when Daniel was 12. She had known from the beginning. "Where is she now?" Quinn asked. Charles glanced toward the rear stairwell. She took the tape and the original evacuation ledger. "What is on the tape?" "Richard's complete confession." Police searched the building. Victoria was no longer on the third floor. Fresh footprints led toward the basement. Daniel followed the officers before Quinn could stop him. The basement corridor was partly flooded. Old pipes crossed the ceiling. At the far end was a medical records incinerator, once used to destroy confidential documents. Its electrical panel had been reconnected. Smoke was already moving through the hallway. Victoria stood in front of the incinerator. Richard's cassette tape was in one hand, the evacuation ledger was in the other. "Put them down," Quinn ordered. Victoria turned. Her face changed when she saw Daniel. "You weren't supposed to come here. You knew." "Daniel, you knew I wasn't your baby when Dad brought me to you. My mother was upstairs. I didn't know she was alive. You knew when I was 18. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Yes. And you still said nothing. I had already been your mother for 18 years. You could have told me and remained my mother. You would have found her. That was my decision. And if she chose you," Daniel's voice rose, "you stole that choice from both of us." Victoria gripped the tape. "I loved you. Then why did you try to destroy my marriage?" "I panicked. You wanted Emily to become the liar so you could remain my mother." Victoria looked toward me. For the first time, she did not appear powerful or controlled. She looked frightened. "I thought if Daniel believed the baby wasn't his, he would refuse another test." "No," I said. "You hoped he would leave me before anyone examined your relation to him." "I was protecting my family. You were protecting ownership." The incinerator motor began to hum. Victoria moved toward it. Daniel stepped between her and the machine. "If you destroy that tape, you lose me forever." She stopped. "You don't mean that." "I do." Her hand opened. The cassette fell to the wet floor. Detective Quinn recovered it, but before officers could secure the ledger, part of the electrical panel exploded. Sparks struck the old insulation. Flames moved across the ceiling. The fire alarm did not work. Smoke filled the basement within seconds. Officers ordered everyone toward the stairs. Victoria slipped on the flooded floor. I reached her first. For one terrible moment, I considered leaving her. She had tried to destroy my marriage. She had accused me of betraying Daniel. She had allowed another mother to suffer for 35 years. But Daniel turned back for her. Together, we pulled Victoria toward the stairwell. An officer carried the evacuation ledger. Detective Quinn protected the cassette inside her coat. We reached the first floor as flames spread through the service corridor. Laura and Charles were already outside. Firefighters arrived minutes later. The maternity building burned behind us for the second time in 35 years. This time, the evidence escaped with us. Victoria was placed inside an ambulance under police supervision. She looked toward Laura. The two women had never met face to face. Laura approached slowly. "You watched me search for him." Victoria lowered her eyes. "I read about you in the newspapers. You knew where my son slept every night." "Yes." "Did he have nightmares?" Victoria looked up. "When he was 6, he dreamed about smoke." "What did you tell him?" "That he was safe." Laura's voice shook. "He should have been safe with me." Daniel stood between them. He did not know which woman to look at. One had given birth to him, one had raised him. Both had lost a child that night, but only one had been given the truth. Detective Quinn took the recovered cassette to a police evidence van. The tape was damaged by water, but the recording could still be played. Richard's voice filled the small speaker. He sounded older than he had when Daniel was born. He said he was recording the confession because cancer had left him little time. He described the death of his biological son, the fire, Matthew's crib near the stairwell, the changed bracelets, Charles altering the hospital database.
Then Richard described entering Victoria's recovery room. He told her their baby was dead. He told her the infant in his arms belonged to another patient. Victoria asked whether the child's mother was alive. Richard said he did not know. Victoria took the baby. She told Richard if they returned him, they would lose both sons in the same night. The recording confirmed that Victoria knew, but Richard's confession contained another detail. The fire had not been caused by faulty wiring. Richard had started it deliberately. He needed the evacuation to create confusion while he changed the baby's identities. He set a small fire in a linen storage room. He believed the sprinklers would contain it. Instead, the flames entered the ventilation system and spread through the maternity wing. 3 people were injured. 1 nurse died months later from complications. Richard had not simply taken advantage of the fire, he created it. Victoria began shaking as the recording continued. "He never told me that." Charles looked equally shocked. Richard said he concealed the truth from both of them. He allowed Charles to believe an electrical fault caused the evacuation. He allowed Victoria to believe he had found Matthew by accident. The original fire investigation never considered Richard a suspect because he was photographed helping patients escape. The man praised as a hero had created the disaster that allowed him to steal a child. When the recording ended, Daniel walked away from us all. I followed him into the snow. He leaned against a police vehicle and covered his face. My father caused the fire. Yes. My mother knew I belonged to someone else. Yes. What part of my childhood was real? You were real. He looked at me. The love you gave Noah is real. The person you became is real. What they did does not belong to you. Before he could respond, my phone rang. It was Dr. Shaw. Noah had developed another severe infection. His immune system was weakening more quickly than expected. The doctors could stabilize him temporarily, but the genetic results showed he would need a compatible stem cell donor soon. Daniel was not a strong match. Neither was I. Victoria was not biologically related to him, but the laboratory identified one promising possibility. Because Laura was Daniel's biological mother, she carried several of the inherited markers found in Noah. Dr. Shaw needed to test her immediately. Daniel had known Laura for less than an hour. Now he had to ask the mother who spent 35 years searching for him to help save the grandson she had never known existed.
Laura Bennett had spent 35 years searching for her missing son. Less than an hour after finding him, she agreed to help save his child. She did not ask for an explanation. She did not ask Daniel to call her mom. She simply looked at him and said, "Take me to my grandson." We returned to the pediatric hospital before sunrise. Detective Quinn remained behind with Victoria and Charles. Laura sat beside Daniel in the back seat of the police vehicle. They did not speak for most of the journey. Sometimes Daniel looked at her. Each time he seemed to recognize something new. The shape of her hands, the way she pressed her lips together when worried, the hazel color around her pupils. I understood why he remained silent. Every familiar feature had become evidence of a life he never knew existed. When we reached the hospital, Dr. Shaw explained Noah's condition to Laura. The disorder prevented his immune system from fighting infections normally. Medication could stabilize him temporarily, but it would not correct the genetic problem. A stem cell transplant offered the best chance of long-term recovery. Laura agreed to every test. While nurses collected her blood, she watched Noah through the glass wall of his hospital room. "He looks like Matthew did," she whispered. Daniel's expression tightened. "You only saw me for a few hours." I memorized everything I could. Laura opened her purse. Inside was a worn envelope containing a photograph taken shortly after Daniel's birth. She had carried it for 35 years. The image showed Laura lying in a hospital bed with a newborn against her chest. Smoke had not yet entered the maternity wing. Richard had not yet started the fire. The name card beside the bed identified the baby as Matthew Bennett. Daniel stared at the photograph. "That's me? That's you." He touched the edge of the picture. For the first time, I saw him accept that Matthew Bennett was not an imaginary missing child. Matthew was part of him. Laura had also preserved copies of every letter she sent to police, hospitals, and newspapers. There were hundreds. When Daniel was 5, she wrote that she believed he might be attending kindergarten somewhere under another name. When he was 16, she asked national authorities to compare unidentified teenagers against his infant medical records. When he turned 30, Laura wrote a birthday letter and placed it in a box with all the others. She had written to him every year. She never knew where to send them. Daniel opened one letter, then another. He stopped after the third because he could no longer see through his tears. "I was 20 minutes away from this hospital during college," he said. Laura nodded. "I know. You searched here?" "Many times. You could have walked past me." "I may have." Neither of them knew how to grieve 35 missing years, so they began with the only thing they could still save: Noah. The preliminary compatibility results arrived that afternoon. Laura shared several important immune markers with him, but because of her age and medical history, she was not the safest donor. Dr. Shaw asked whether Laura had any other biological children. Laura hesitated. Then she told us about her daughter, Anna Bennett. She was 29 and lived in the same city. Laura had raised her alone after separating from Matthew's biological father. Anna had grown up knowing about the brother who disappeared before she was born. She had attended missing child events with Laura. She had helped upload Laura's DNA to new databases whenever technology improved. When Laura called, Anna came immediately. She entered the hospital consultation room carrying the box of birthday letters. Daniel stood when he saw her. Anna had Laura's gray-brown hair and Daniel's hazel eyes. She stopped several feet away from him. "I always wondered what you would look like," she said. Daniel gave a nervous laugh. "I didn't know you existed till yesterday." Anna nodded. That makes this introduction slightly unfair. For the first time since the DNA report arrived, Daniel smiled. The laboratory confirmed that Daniel and Anna were maternal half-siblings. Anna volunteered for compatibility testing. Her genetic markers were a significantly stronger match for Noah than any other relative tested. Further medical screening confirmed she could safely donate. The transplant was scheduled for the following week. During those 7 days, Noah developed pneumonia. He was moved into a protected isolation room. Daniel and I took turns sitting beside him. Laura came every morning. Anna prepared for the donation. Outside the hospital, the investigation continued. Detective Quinn recovered the original DNA report from Victoria's car. It contained the relationship page proving Victoria was not Daniel's biological mother. Investigators also found the computer she had used to create the false paternity result. The document template came from Richard's old medical files. Victoria had changed the sample numbers, replaced the relationship findings, and printed the altered page before entering the laboratory. Charles admitted helping her obtain the photocopy of my driver's license. He also admitted signing Daniel's false discharge papers 35 years earlier. The recovered evacuation ledger supported Richard's recorded confession. It showed that the biological Carter baby had been declared dead before the fire began. It also showed Matthew Bennett was still alive when Richard carried him away from the evacuation corridor. Richard's death meant he could never be prosecuted, but his public reputation changed. St. Anne's removed his photograph from a memorial wall honoring people who had helped during the fire. The city corrected the investigation. The fire was no longer classified as an electrical accident. It was recorded as deliberate arson committed to conceal a child abduction. Charles pled guilty to falsifying medical records, conspiracy, and obstruction of a missing child investigation. His cooperation and the passage of time affected his sentence, but he did not avoid responsibility. Victoria faced charges for forgery, medical records theft, obstruction, and attempting to destroy evidence. Because she had not physically taken Daniel from the hospital, she was not charged with the original abduction, but prosecutors argued that she knowingly concealed his identity for decades. The most painful evidence came from letters police found inside her bedroom closet. Laura had written to the Carter family 17 years ago after receiving an anonymous tip. The letter included Matthew's infant photograph and asked whether Daniel might be her missing son.
Victoria had read it. She had kept it. She never answered. Daniel visited Victoria once before her court hearing. I did not go inside with him. I waited in the courthouse hallway. He returned 40 minutes later carrying the sealed letter Laura had written 17 years earlier. "What did she say?" I asked. "She said she was afraid that blood would matter more than love." "What did you tell her?" "That love without truth becomes control." He sat beside me. "I told her I haven't forgotten that she raised me, but I can't pretend that raising me gave her the right to erase someone else." "Did she apologize?" "Yes." "Do you believe her?" "I believe she is sorry that she lost me." "That isn't what I asked." Daniel looked at the letter. "No, I don't think she understands what she did to Laura or to you." The judge ordered Victoria to have no unsupervised contact with Noah during the investigation. Daniel also established his own boundary. He would communicate with her only through his attorney and therapist. He was not ready to decide whether she would ever return to our family. For once, Victoria did not get to make that decision for him. Anna's stem cell donation took place on a Monday morning. The procedure went well. Noah received the transplant that afternoon. Then we waited. The first week brought fevers. The second brought another infection. For several days, the doctors could not tell us whether the new cells were working. Laura sat with us through every update. She never tried to replace Victoria. She never asked Daniel for affection he was not ready to give. She simply remained present. On the 19th day, Noah's blood test showed the first sign that the donor cells were growing. Dr. Shaw smiled before she entered the room. I knew the news was good before she spoke. The transplant was working. Noah's immune cell count rose slowly. After 7 weeks, we carried him home. Anna had saved his life. The DNA test Victoria altered to protect her secret ultimately led us to the donor Noah needed. Daniel struggled for months after the hospital investigation. He began therapy. So did I. The false report lasted for less than 1 day, but the moment he doubted me did not disappear when the truth arrived. He apologized without asking me to forget. Trust returned through smaller choices. He attended every medical appointment. He gave access to every conversation with the attorneys and investigators. When he felt overwhelmed, he told me instead of leaving. We rebuilt our marriage honestly. Daniel also began building a relationship with Laura and Anna. At first, he called her by her first name. She accepted that. The word mom belonged to a complicated place inside him. Laura never demanded it. She shared photographs and stories about the Bennett family. She told him his biological grandfather repaired clocks. His grandmother sang when she cooked. His biological father had died 12 years earlier, without learning that Matthew was alive. Daniel visited his grave. He placed one of Laura's unopened birthday letters beside the stone. Legally, Daniel was allowed to keep the name he had used his entire life. The court also corrected his birth record. His original birth name was restored in the historical file. After months of consideration, he changed his full legal name to Daniel Matthew Carter Bennett. Daniel was the name he carried through life. Matthew honored the baby Laura lost. Carter represented the childhood he could not erase. Bennett returned the family name stolen from him. 1 year after Noah's transplant, we gathered at our house for his first healthy Christmas. He was 16 months old. He had begun walking and had discovered that wrapped presents were more interesting than toys. Laura arrived with Anna. Anna brought a small wooden train. Laura carried the box of birthday letters. She gave them to Daniel. "They belong to you now," she said. Daniel opened the letter written on his 18th birthday. Laura had written that she hoped her son had grown into a kind man. She hoped whoever raised him made him feel safe. And if he ever found her, she wanted him to know that she had never stopped looking. Daniel finished the letter. Then he embraced her. It was the first time he had done so without hesitation. "I'm sorry it took me 35 years," he said. Laura held him tightly. "You were a baby. None of it was your fault." Noah walked unsteadily toward them. Laura lifted him into her arms. The grandmother Victoria tried to erase from the DNA report was holding the child her biological family had helped save. Victoria sent Noah a Christmas card through her attorney. Daniel placed it inside a drawer. He was not ready to open it. Perhaps one day he would. Forgiveness was possible. Access was not automatic. The truth did not require us to hate Victoria, but it did require us to stop allowing her fear to control our family. I sometimes think about the afternoon she placed that altered report on my kitchen table. She expected one false page to separate Daniel from me. She believed that if she made me look unfaithful, no one would examine the relationship between her and her son. For a few hours her plan worked. Daniel doubted me. I doubted the laboratory. Our family almost broke before we realized the evidence had been changed. But Victoria misunderstood something about DNA. A DNA test can reveal biological relationships. It cannot measure who stayed awake beside a sick child. It cannot measure years of care. It cannot decide who deserves to be called family. Victoria raised Daniel. Laura gave birth to him and searched for him. Anna had never met him but helped save his son. All of those truths could exist at the same time. The lie was believing that one truth had to destroy the others. My mother-in-law changed my baby's DNA test before I ever saw the results. She wanted the report to prove that my husband was not Noah's father. Instead, the real test proved that Daniel was Noah's father. It revealed that Victoria was not Daniel's biological mother. It identified him as a child missing for 35 years, and it led us to the family member who saved our baby's life. Victoria changed one page to protect her secret, but the truth had already been written inside our blood.